Did the Philippines really drown in debt? And which president borrowed the most, Noy, Duterte, or BBM? Today, we're breaking down the real numbers. No politics, just facts. Let's start with President Benigno Pinoy Aquino III, who served from 2010 to 2016. When Pinoy took office, national debt was about 4.7 trillion pesos. By the time he left in 2016, debt rose to around 6.1 trillion pesos. That's an increase of roughly 1.4 trillion pesos over 6 years. But here's the important part. During Pinoy's term, the economy grew faster than the debt. Because of this, the debt to GDP ratio actually improved, showing strong fiscal discipline during his administration. Next, President Rodrigo Duterte, from 2016 to 2022. Debt at the start of his term was about 6.1 trillion pesos. By the end of his presidency, it reached around 13.4 trillion pesos. That's a massive increase of roughly 7.3 trillion pesos. But context matters. Two major drivers pushed borrowing higher. First was the Build Infrastructure Program. Second was the COVID-19 pandemic, which forced the government to borrow heavily for emergency spending. In fact, the biggest jump in debt happened during the pandemic years, now under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. or BBM. He inherited debt of about 13.4 trillion pesos in 2022. Recent figures show debt has risen to around 16 to 17 trillion pesos. So yes, debt is still increasing. But the government's strategy now is to grow the economy fast enough to stabilize the debt ratio. Currently, the Philippines' debt to GDP ratio is hovering around 60%, higher than pre-pandemic levels but still considered manageable by many economists. Here's the truth most people miss. In public finance, the key question is not just magkano ang utang. The real questions are, can the country pay? Is the economy growing? And where was the money used? From a finance perspective, PNoy focused on fiscal discipline. Duterte expanded spending, especially during COVID. BBM is managing a higher inherited debt base. So the story is more nuanced than headlines suggest. If you want more clear, data-driven breakdowns of the Philippine economy, hit like and subscribe. See you in the next video.